Section 2.2, Organizing Quantitative Data, the popular displays. Objectives. By the end of this section, you will be able to organize quantitative data into tables, construct histograms for discrete and continuous data, draw stem and leaf plots, draw dot plots, and identify the shape of the distribution. Now, this section deals with summarizing quantitative data. When summarizing quantitative data, first determine whether the data are discrete or continuous. If the data are discrete with relatively few values of the variable, then the categories of the data called classes will be the observation, just like it was for qualitative data. However, if the data are discrete, but with many different values of the variables, or if the data are continuous, then the categories of the data, the classes, must be created using intervals of numbers such as 10 to 19, 20 to 29, and so on. We first present the techniques for organizing discrete quantitative data when there are relatively few different values, and then proceed to organize in continuous quantitative data. So the first objective, number one, is to organize discrete data in tables. So we're going to use the values of the discrete variable to create the classes when the number of distinct data values is small. The approach to summarizing the data is similar to that of constructing frequency or relative frequency distributions from qualitative data, where the categories of data are determined by the actual observations. So let's take a look at an example here. Constructing frequency and relative frequency distributions from discrete data. The manager of a Wendy's fast food restaurant wants to know the typical number of customers who arrive during the lunch hour. The data in a table below represent the number of customers who arrive at Wendy's for 40 randomly selected 15-minute intervals of time during lunch. So for example, during one 15-minute interval, 7 customers arrived. We want to be able to construct a frequency and relative frequency distribution. So here are the number of arrivals at Wendy's. Now, the number of people arriving could be 0, 1, 2, 3. So the table to the left shows that there are 11 categories of data from this study, mainly 1, 2, 3 to 11. Now we want to tally the number of observations for each category, count each tally, and then create the frequency and relative frequency distributions. So the two distributions are shown in the table. So from the relative frequencies, for example, 27.5% of the 15-minute intervals had 6 customers arrive at Wendy's during the lunch hours. Let's go ahead and first tally this information. Okay, so how many do we have for 1? Okay, well, we have 1, so there's 1. Okay, and then how many 2 do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. And then for 3, we have 1. And then for 4, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then for 5, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then for 6, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then for 7, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. And then for 8, we have 2. And then for 9, we also have 2. And then for 10, we have 0. And for 11, we have 1. Okay, so for the frequency, well, we know what the frequency is. So for the first one, it's going to be 1. And then what is the total? Oops, let's go ahead and make that change here. So I put the 1 in, it should be in for the 11. So let's make sure that is correct. Okay, and then when we add up all the tallies, we're going to get the total of 40. Okay, so if we take 1 and then divide that by 40, that's going to give us the relative frequency. Okay, and so what does 1 divided by 40 equal? Well, if we take 1 and then we divide it by 40, we're going to get 0.025. Okay, so now let's go ahead and then fill in the rest of the information here. Okay, so we have 1, right? And then we had 6, 1, 4, 7, 11, 5, 2, 2, 0, and then 1. And then here is our frequency. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that information. Okay, so here is our frequency and our relative frequency for our information. So here is our result. Okay, now, how will we do this on StatCrunch? Well, on StatCrunch, okay, we're going to enter the raw data into the spreadsheet, and then we're going to name the column variable. And then we're going to select stat, highlight tables, and then select frequency. And then we're going to click on the variable you want to summarize. You can click the type of table you want. And if you want both frequency and relative frequency, you're going to highlight frequency, then press Control Command, and then select relative frequency. Let's go ahead and do that. So in here's StatCrunch. And what I've done is I labeled the column arrivals, and then I put in all the numbers from the table. So all these numbers are now in the table, okay? And so again, according to our instructions, okay, what we need to do is we need to, now that we entered that information, we're going to go to Stat. Let's sign in first. Okay, we're going to go to Stat. And then we're going to go down to where we see tables, and then we're going to select frequency. Okay, and then we're going to select the column, and then we're going to make sure that frequency is highlighted and as well as relative frequency. And then we can leave the value as ascending, and then we're going to select compute. Okay, and then when we do that, we can see that we get a table that represents our data, which is exactly what we did by hand. So therefore, using these instructions have now given us this table.